What is going on? Welcome back to Founders Fire, where I help you stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms. My name is Iggy Odighizuwa, and I'm the founder of CharlieAI.io, an AI-powered appointment setter that puts more sales qualified calls on your sales team's calendar without you having to spend more money on ads. Now, let's dive into today's video. So if you guys have been following, I was documenting how we were taking one of our brands in our portfolio from doing about $165,000 a month when I started documenting it to doing over $1 million per month. Now, what I want to do in today's video is actually talk about how we forecasted our $1 million a month 3 months in advance. So there was like 4 inputs, 3 different scenarios, 1 spreadsheet, and we were off by less than 10%. So that kind of like accuracy when it comes to that is really, really critical. Right? Most operators run reaction. The good ones run by forecast, right? So in December, we built a spreadsheet that predicted we'd collect $1 million a month. In March, and we actually ended up collecting 1.1 million, and we were off by 10% in a good way. We actually ended up doing more than what we initially forecast. This is a hindsight calculator. This is the actual document that drove every decision we made in Q1. Forecasting is a skill that really separates operators from doing like $50,000 in a month one time. So many people I see a lot of testimonials and a lot of case studies of businesses that did like 100,000 in a month, but it's like they only did it in 1 month. They only did it one time, or they did $250,000 and they only did it one time. And the way that you can predictably and repeatably hit revenue records and hit consistent revenue months is having really good operations, right? And when you do that, it's really what separates you from having a business that just is flying by the seat of your pants, is just going up and down, and you have no idea how to like predict what you can produce. So you have to be able to forecast. Right. And the way that I do forecasting is I pull each of the data from the last 30 days. Right. And if you have more data, pull it from the last 90 days. So what you want to do is get these 4 inputs. What is your average cash collected for the last 30 to 90 days? Right. What's the average cash collected for the last 30 to 90 days? And the easiest way for you to do that is figure out, like, calculate how much has hit your bank from new sales in the last 90 days and divide it by however many customers you enrolled in that same time frame, right? If $10,000 hit your bank account in the last 30 days and you sold 10 people, then you're collecting $1,000 per customer, right? So you want to know, what is your average order value, like, and specifically, what is your average cash collected per sale? Right? And you want to know that for either the last 30 days or for the last 90 days. That's the average that you want. Your average cash collected per sale, not contract value. I don't give a damn about contract value. I care about revenue, like what hits your bank account. And then the second input is your show rate. What is the amount of calls that your team takes versus what was booked? And you want that for the last 30 to 90 days. The third input is your close rate, your sales conversion. And then your last input is going to be your cost per booking. And the way that I do cost per booking is we do cost for qualified booking. So when our marketing team, Blue Chip Acquisition is my marketing firm that comes in as a fractional CMO and takes over all direct response acquisition. So everything from click to them showing up, like, that team runs. So these 4 numbers are what drive your ability to forecast. And if you don't know these 4 numbers off the top of your head, that's the actual reason your business feels stuck. Because once you know these numbers, predicting what you want to do with the business and where it needs to go and what the inputs needs to be becomes just child's play, right? So you got to know these 4 numbers. You got to have them. And if you don't know them, that's your first homework, is go get these numbers. And then once you have those, then we go and run 3 different scenarios, right? We had 3 different scenarios and ultimately 1 commitment. I'll build out the worst case scenario, and then I build out what we can expect. And then once we have what we can expect, then I build out what we can ultimately commit to, right? So we have worst case scenario, we have what we can expect, and then we have what we can ultimately commit to when it comes to the goals that we want to be able to hit and set for the business. All right. And so once we map this out, this is what determined what we were going to commit to in Q1 and why we were like, hey, based on our current pacing, if we pull these levers, increase spend by this, maintain this in terms of our show rate and maintain this in terms of our close rate, if we just increase our spend and we can actually do $1 million a month, but here's what it's going to look like if we end up doing that. Here's how many bookings we can expect. And here's what we need to do in terms of sales team, right? So here's how many people we need to hire for our sales teams. And if we do that, here's the amount of enrollments we can expect. Is the back end ready to actually handle that kind of volume? And they're like, no, we do that, it's going to implode. So now the coaches, they need to go and hire, I think, for like 13 new coaches, full-time coaches ahead of said increase, right? So we've got the 5 operations: ad spend, cost per booking, show rate, close rate, and average order value equals like what we can expect in terms of cash collected, right? And these numbers tell you whether your plan is realistic or wishful. But the formula isn't the magic. The magic is what happens when you plug the actual numbers every month into the spreadsheet, and it tells you whether you're winning or whether you're slipping. All right. So the spreadsheet that we use for all of our blue chip forecasting is, I call it our client forecast revenue calculator. And this sheet allows us to be able to run these numbers and just kind of start to do some real cool math in terms of understanding what we can expect from the efforts that we're running. So this is what the sheet looks like, right? We got our worst case scenario. We plug in our revenue targets over the next 6 months. We plug in our average sale price, like what's actually collected. We plug in our sales conversion. We plug in our show rate. We plug in our cost per booking. And then from there, we can start to know, are we pacing this? Are we off track? Are we on track? Where do we need to be? What's the actual target number that we need to have? And then from here, this is where it starts to get really, really cool. Because as we start to work on these numbers, and let's say the team is at 40% show rate, now we can go, well, the show rate was 20%, but we're able to get it to 40%. And so now it's actually at 40%. Now we're pacing a 3-to-1 return on cash collected versus where we started. So once we map out those numbers and we map out what the commitments look like and what we need it to be, we're plugging in those numbers and we're updating it every single month. And I'll update it every single week initially when our business is like learning how to really make some tweaks to hit projection consistently, right? And so early on, we had to increase the frequency of how frequently we updated the numbers until the business and the different departments learn like how to adjust and understand what levers needed to be pulled each week to get on track if they were off track, and what needed to be done to stay on track if they were on track, right? So every Monday morning, we're plugging in these numbers of the last week's actual numbers, right? And then let the numbers tell you what levers to pull. Like, what was the actual sales conversions from last week? Not next month. Like, what was the actual sales conversions from last week? And then what was the actual show rate from last week? And then what were the marketing conversions from last week? So once we plug in those numbers, I can go, well, marketing is at risk, right? Our cost per booking is out of KPI. We need to make some adjustments there. Or our sales conversion is out of KPI. We need to, like, what's going on with the sales team, right? So then I'm no more, I think we should try this, or every adjustment is a response to some random feeling that we get. It's like, no, we're not touching marketing, because everything here within the marketing is within KPI. Guess what's not within KPI is the actual sales conversion that you need in order for this to be profitable, right? So let's focus our time and attention on fixing that. We fix that, revenue record every single time, right? Or we fix sales, we fix marketing, but they're churning too fast on the back end. So now we need to focus our attention on fixing fulfillment in that department, right? What's going on there and implementing structure into how clients are being managed. So we got to implement what I call like our client management system. Like, how are the clients being managed? And then we have to implement our program optimization formula. Like, how do we increase the results that the clients are getting from the program, right? Because marketing and sales are humming and we're producing new clients, but it's creating revolving door that's just churning through clients, right? So the numbers tell you exactly what needs to be fixed and what needs to be adjusted, right? And so the warning you want to start to understand is like when the forecast lies, right? In January, I made a marketing change that quietly reduced booking volume in exchange for cost efficiency, right? And so we made a change to it, and it wasn't even me that made a change. The marketing made a change, but my partner who oversees the media buying made a change there, right? So he made a change that reduced booking volume in exchange for cost efficiency. So what that meant is that the things that he was optimizing for is actually bringing our cost per booking down, but it was also bringing our volume of bookings down, right? And he didn't tell me and didn't tell anybody else on the team, as far as outside of his department, what he was doing, right? And then the forecast hadn't been updated to account for the reduction in volume and also account for the increase in capital efficiency, right? And so we thought we were tracking, we weren't, right? Because then when we went back to update the forecast and plug in the numbers, we're like, hey, like our actuals are nowhere close to where we need to be. What's going on, right? So that communication gap triggered a doubling in spend mistake that cost us $100,000, right? So that little gap in communication, marketing was making the ad account spend more efficiently, but in an exchange for being more efficient, they were cutting cost, reducing cost per booking, but they were also reducing booking volume. We didn't update the forecast based on those new variables, right? And that communication gap caused us to knee-jerk react and go, hey, like we are not pacing what we're forecasting, and it looks like we're not spending enough money. So we went and we tried to double the spend and force an aggressive increase in spend, which cost us about $100,000 in missed opportunity because the ad campaign went back into learning mode and ultimately messed things up. So the rule is you build a forecast and you got to communicate every input change weekly. So that's the rule that we had to implement so that the model wouldn't lie to us. All right. So December versus the actual. So December, we predicted by March, we would hit $1 million in cash collected, and we would have to spend about $140,000 in order to do that. What actually happened was in March, we did $1.1 million in cash collected and ended up spending $162,000 in ads in order to do that. So there was like a less than a 10% variance between that. All right. But that's not luck. That's the difference between operating by feeling and operating by math. Once you switch, it is so hard to go back because what needs to happen within the business and the levers that you need to pull are so abundantly clear on what you need to do. It becomes child's play to predictably hit the targets that you set. All right. But in order to actually make this work, you need systems in different parts of the business that produce predictable outcome, right? You need your marketing engine to produce predictable results. And then you need your lead management system to produce predictable results, which is why I don't take on a portfolio client unless they have Charlie, because I need to be able to engineer Charlie to produce a predictable amount of bookings, a predictable lead to book rate, a predictable show rate, in order for us to be able to have clear and clean forecasting that aren't dependent on human variables, right? So our marketing isn't dependent on human variables. Our lead management system isn't dependent on human variables as far as like what we control. Our sales team is dependent on human variables, but we're okay with the human variables that happens inside of the sales team because that's production. They have to produce, and then we have a sales system that the sales team has to implement in order to ensure that they're producing at a consistent clip, right? And then the fulfillment in the back end is dependent on some human variables, but even then is dependent on the actual fulfillment system. There's a system to it. There's a process for how the end user product gets delivered, and a human variable is like the relationship management and guiding people through the system and ensuring that there's enough accountability and support to ensure that the clients going through it are getting the results that they're paying the company to produce. All right. So starting this next week, like start running this next week. Know your 4 inputs. What is your average cash collected, your show rate, your close rate, and your cost per booking for the last 30 to 90 days? And then build 3 scenarios. Worst case, expected, and what is your stretch commitment? And then set the plan around the stretch case, right? You want to set your plan around the stretch case, but then set your targets around the worst case scenario, right? So you create your plan to hit the stretch case, but you build your worst case your targets around the worst case scenarios, right? And then you run the formula. You add your ad spend divided by cost per booking times show rate times sales conversion times your AOV equals what you can collect. So let's do it like this. All right, so I'm going to pull out my calculator and we're going to run the math together. So let's say ad spend is going to be $140,000 divided by our cost per booking, which is right now 185, times our show rate, which is 59.59, times our sales conversion, which is 0.48 right now, times our average cash collected, which for this offer is 6,500, which means this month, if that was the numbers, we're actually pacing $719,000 in cash collected, right? So you put that formula in, you do ad spend divided by cost per booking times your show rate times your close rate times your average order value equals cash collected for whatever period you're running that in. So if you do your ad spend for the week, divided by your cost per booking times your show rate times your sales conversion times your average order value equals how much cash you can expect to collect that week, right? You review this weekly and plug in your actual numbers every single Monday. And when the number slips, you pull the lever, that same lever the same week, and you start to see like, what are the things that we need to change in order to get where we need to be? And then you communicate every input change, and you just don't make changes in a silo. All right, so you can't optimize what you don't measure. So start measuring those 4 numbers inside of your acquisition engine, and you're going to be able to produce predictable results every single time. And at least you'll start to increase your pattern recognition of what you can actually expect based on what you're spending. All right, so if you like that breakdown and you want access to that revenue forecast calculator, become a Charlie client. So that's a tool that we give our Charlie users. And that's a tool that we use for our blue chip clients to essentially run everything that I've been implementing and showing you. All right. So we implemented our 8-figure sales team framework. We implemented our show rate optimization playbook. We implemented our AI lead management system. And then we implemented our blue chip acquisition engine. And we put those 4 things together. And we've been able to engineer consistently $1 million a month in cash collected. And we're going on to do this we're working on our 8th brand to take the 8 figures with an offer like this. So found this helpful, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Till next time, stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms. Peace.